I am sure you can tell from the title of this video, I had a baby. So if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that the last 2 years of my life have been a whirlwind. I met my husband in 2021, and then we got married in 2022, and then we got pregnant right after our honeymoon, and then we welcomed our son 2 weeks ago? No, 10 days ago. So if you hear little baby noises, it's because he's in here with me. And I'm going to introduce him to you guys, to the YouTube family, at the end of this video. But I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about my birth experience, because I know a lot of people are curious, especially when you're plus size and pregnant, what it's like, what, you know, and what I went through. And actually he was a month early. His due date was March 13th. He came on February 13th. So he was exactly a month early. I had an induction scheduled for him at 38 weeks, which would have been today, I think. What is today? No, next Monday. And he just didn't make it that far. So I'm gonna run down what happened. And I ended up having him naturally, which was not my plan at all. I had always been that person that was like, give me the drugs, I want the epidural, I want all the things. If you can like knock me out, take the baby, wake me back up, that's what I always said that I wanted. So it was Super Bowl Sunday, and I had woken up. You'll get to the point in pregnancy, or I did, and a lot of my friends have said that they did too, where you're like, did I pee myself? Disclaimer, this video is going to tell you all the things. So if you don't want to hear about all the things, then skip to the end to meet the baby. But I wanted to tell you guys the cold hard truth. So I woke up Sunday morning and I was like kind of curious of whether, you know, had I peed myself or was it fluid or what, you know, what was happening. It wasn't a lot, but it was like enough for me to notice it. And so I was like, well, I'll just keep a watch on it during the day. And I had been having contractions for about 2 weeks. So that's not unusual. They weren't strong, they weren't continuous, and they weren't like getting closer together or stronger. I had a few episodes where they were really, really strong, but like for the most part, they were just like, felt like menstrual cramps. And they would come and go. But yeah, so I had been having those for a couple weeks, and then I woke up Super Bowl Sunday and I was unsure what was happening. I was like, am I leaking amniotic fluid? Like, what is the deal? But I was not concerned about it. I got up and went about my day, and I had called my cousin. So you'll hear me talk about Ashley a lot in this video. She is my cousin, but she's like a sister to me. I call her kids my niece and nephew. We grew up right next door to each other. We were inseparable growing up, so she's more like a sister than a cousin to me. So I called her because she has 2 children, and I was like, hey, here's what's going on. Like, I don't know if it's, you know, if I've just peed myself or if I was leaking amniotic fluid or what. Because sometimes if you're leaking fluids, like when you're laying down, it kind of pulls, and when you get up, you notice more of it, right? But when you're just walking around and doing stuff active during the day, it would not be as much as what I found when I woke up Sunday morning. So anyway, I was like, I don't think it's anything. I'm going to keep a watch on it, but I'm not concerned about it. So I went about my day. I started putting stuff in the crock pot for the Super Bowl. I started making buffalo chicken dip. I was getting everything ready. Well, Ashley called back, and she had talked to my other cousin Denise, and she was like, they like tag team called me, and they were like, we really think you should go and get checked out just to make sure that, you know, it's nothing crazy. And so I was like, I really didn't want to, because I had not been to like the OB/ER my whole pregnancy. Like, I was like, I'm just not a hospital person. Like, I'm not gonna go unless I really, really think I need to go. No, I'm not gonna put my baby at risk, but also I'm not gonna go if I don't think I need to go. So they kind of were like, okay, they kind of put it in my head, if you go and get checked out and it's nothing, then, you know, just enjoy your Sunday. So I had already had a hospital bag packed, but it didn't have like everything I wanted to take in it, but it had like main necessities, but it didn't have like my iPad, didn't have like, you know, anything like creature comforts kind of things. It just had like the necessities in it, and for me and for baby. And Gotham had not packed anything. So I told him, I was like, grab me like some joggers and some t-shirts and I'll put them in my suitcase. But he didn't get his like laptop charger. We didn't think we thought we were going to go and we were going to come back, right? We were going to come home that day. So I got the car seat. We'd already installed the base, but I got the car seat put in the car, got my hospital bag, put that in the car, and then we headed to my town has a women's and children's hospital that has an OBER specifically. So if you are pregnant, you can go straight there instead of having to go to like the regular ER and be exposed to anybody that might be sick or whatever. So that also was another reason that I was like, well, I'll just go get checked out. It's not gonna hurt anything. So got there, signed in, they came and got me, and I was like, hey, here's the deal. I don't know if I peed myself or if I'm leaking amniotic fluid. I'm 36 weeks. Have an induction scheduled for 38 weeks, and I was supposed to have my 36-week appointment that Tuesday with a final growth scan for the baby and my first cervix check, which I had not had up until this point. So they took me back to a room and they were like, we're gonna check your cervix and just see if you're dilated, and we're gonna swab you and we're gonna see if it's amniotic fluid that you're leaking. So that was the first time I had experienced a cervix check. It was so painful. Like I came up off the table. I was like gripping the side. Like it was so painful. I wanted to like cry and scream. It was so painful. And I have a very high pain tolerance, but I'm just being completely honest with you guys. I was 70% effaced, but my inner cervix was completely closed. My outer cervix was a little open, but I was not dilating it or anything like that. So, but the swab that they did came back positive for amniotic fluid. So they brought in the doctor that was on the OB floor, and she wanted to talk to me, and she's like, those swabs can sometimes be, you know, they're not always accurate. She's like, so I'm gonna take a look. So she looked and she used like this little like telescope thing that they put in there. And she's like, I see some fluid and some blood, but that could be from the cervix check. And so she said, we're gonna do an ultrasound. So they brought in the ultrasound tech. And at that point I was laying flat on my back, and I did not do well flat on my back that pregnant. Like it was just putting a lot of pressure on me. So I started to feel really, really faint as she was doing my ultrasound. And she didn't tell me at the time, but his heart rate dropped. So he was in distress at that point. So she was like, I'm just gonna go out and make sure that I got everything I needed. And then when she came back in, like 5 people rushed into the room, and they were like, turn on your side. And like they immediately started looking for the baby's heart rate and made sure that it was, you know, okay. But because he had gone into distress and because the amniotic fluid was positive, the doctor decided to go ahead and admit me. So my doctor is in a practice of like a bunch of different doctors, but she was not the one on call, and it was a weekend. So it was a different doctor in her practice that was on call. So they called her, and the plan from there was to admit me and start me on a medication to soften my cervix that night. And then the next day they would start me on Pitocin to start contractions, and I would labor all day, what would have been Monday. So Ashley came up there. The plan was for it to be Gotham and Ashley in the room with me for delivery. My parents were gonna stay in the waiting room. Like my mom and I were super, super close, but like we are not a calming presence to each other. So we had decided that it was best that Ashley stay in there with me, because she is definitely a calming presence to me. And she, you know, has been through this and she knows, and my mom had only had C-sections. So that was around probably around 4-ish on Sunday. Yeah, because the Super Bowl was getting ready to start. And then, so they had the belly strap baby monitors on me. So they have one that monitors me for contractions and one that monitors the baby. Well, he was not cooperating at all with that monitor. He was moving and they could not keep him on that. And it was like, I had to stay completely still once they found him, and it was just not a good situation. And then they kept losing his heart rate, and like his heart rate was kind of dropping. And so they, at that point, decided to scrap the cervix softening medication and just start the Pitocin. The nurse that I had at that time, she was like an OG nurse. She was hilarious. She was great. She was very knowledgeable. She was convinced that I would end up in a C-section, because she was convinced the baby was not going to tolerate contractions, like real contractions. So they started me on Pitocin. They just wanted to see how he did, and if he was going into distress, they would have to stop it and start it again. And then, so that was happening, and the monitor was not picking up on him accurately. So they put what was a wireless monitor on me, and it was kind of like It had like little electrode things all around it, and then it had a little battery pack that like magnetized onto it, and it was so much easier for me to get comfortable and to like move around and go to the bathroom and do all the things, because I'm still 36 weeks pregnant at this point. I have to go to the bathroom all the time. So that worked for a little while, and then he was not cooperating again. They were losing him, and he would come on the monitor, and then he'd go off the monitor, and then he'd come on the monitor. And so, but my contractions, because the Pitocin had really picked up, and I was starting to get into like some pain. So she did another cervical check on me, and I was 2 centimeters at that point. And the anesthesiologist came in to talk to me about like epidural, what that would look like if I ended up in emergency C-section, like would I be okay with a spinal and all this kind of stuff, right? So we just kind of talked over what would happen. And then the night shift nurse came in, and she was fantastic. She hardly left my side. It was great. She's the one that put me on the wireless monitor and all that, and did my second cervical check, which when I was 2. So at that point they were like, it's gonna be a long night. You know, I sent Ashley home, my parents home. Like they were like, you're gonna be laboring all the next day. This is your first baby. This is gonna be a slow process. So at that point, Gotham stayed. Me and Gotham were the only ones there, and my contractions were really picking up, and it was like painful, and I was like, can I get the epidural? Like I was like starting to ask for it, right? And so she came in. She could only check my cervix every 2 hours, because at the point that I was at, every time you check your cervix, you could introduce bacteria into the body. So they only do it every 2 hours. And so I'm laying there at one point, and I feel my water break. So at that point, we weren't sure that my water had broken, or if I was leaking amniotic fluid, or if it had broken at home, or like what the situation was. But I felt it, and it was the most surreal feeling. Like I felt like a water balloon just popped inside of me, and I could feel like I could hear it. I even asked Gotham, because he was standing next to me. I was like, did you hear that? And he was like, what? And I was like, it felt like a rubber band snap, or like a water balloon busted, and I could hear it in my head, I swear. So I called the nurse, and I was like, my water broke. Like it obviously had not broken at home. It just broke. I know it. I feel it. I know that it did. So she texts me. She's like, yes, definitely. And I was like, can I have the epidural? Because at this point I was in pain. And she said, well, you cannot have the epidural until you are dilated to 4. So she's like, I can check you again in 30 minutes, because last time we were at a 2, and then we'll go from there. So we waited the 30 minutes. She came in to check me again, and I was a 3. And I was like, oh man. And so then I was just like, okay, you know, I'll suffer, you know, I'll get through it. And I'll breathe through it, and we'll make this happen. And so about an hour went by, I guess. And at that point, the nurse would come in and check on me, and she was like, you know, you're having strong contractions. She'd look at the thing, and she would see that they were really regular, and they were strong. So at that point, I was like, she said, now if you feel pressure that doesn't go away, because like the contractions, I could feel pressure when they would come and go, but if you feel pressure that doesn't go away, that could be the baby. So I had to go to the bathroom. So Gotham helped me go to the bathroom, and on my way back from the bathroom, I felt a really strong contraction come on, and it did not go away. Like I got back to the side of the bed, and I told the nurse, like, it's not going away. You know, like this could be it. Like it felt different. And so she was like, granted, last time she checked me, I was at a 3. She's like, okay, let me check you. So I finally got myself into the bed where she could check me. I was in so much pain, and I was at an 8, you guys. I went from a 3 to an 8 within like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so she looked at Gotham, and she said, if Ashley's coming back, call her right now. So I was like, and at this point I was in active labor. Like my body was trying to push. But there was no doctor there yet. The doctor on call had just been called, because again, I was at a 3. We thought this was a long thing. And the baby's heart rate again dropped. So at that point, again, room fills with people, right? They had the nurses, they had called the hospital doctor, because my doctor was like, the doctor from my practice was on the way, but she had not gotten there yet. So they called him up. They are having me flip back and forth onto my sides, and y'all, I'm screaming like a crazy person through contractions. Like they are hurting. There was no more time for an epidural at that point. Like we were doing this naturally, and I didn't even have time to realize that, because things were happening so fast. But I can't push until a doctor is in the room. So, and the baby they were trying to find his heart rate again. So they had me flip onto my hands and my knees, and they put a monitor on the baby's head while he was still inside. And once they got him on the monitor and they could see that he was doing okay, then they could be like, okay, let's, turn you back over. Here comes the doctor. So this was all within like literally a 15-minute period. Okay. And I was just like, it's all a blur because I was just screaming. And I know that people around me were probably like, I don't want to do this. I want to go home if that's what it's going to feel like. And so the doctor got up there, and I remember a nurse coming to the side of the bed, and she said, "You're 100% complete." And I looked at her in the face and I said, "I don't know what that means." Like, I'm a first-time mom. I had no idea what she's talking about. And she says, "It means you can push." And the doctor was there, and so they were like, "Okay, it's time to push." And so since I had not had an epidural, I felt the contractions coming on, and my body, like, it was involuntary at that point. My body was going to push. It didn't matter whether it was ready or they were ready or not. So with the contractions, I think I pushed a total of 6 times between 2 contractions. And once I got the hang of it, like, instead of like screaming with the pain, I would use the pain to, like, bear down, put chin to chest, legs up, and just push. And so, like, within 2 contractions, so about 6 pushes, he was out. And Ashley made it in time for them to say, "Here he comes." And, like, literally there he was. And so when he came out, he was having a little bit of trouble breathing. And so I didn't hear him cry. And so they took him over to the bed, and I was like, "Is he okay?" And so they kind of like checked him, and they were like, "Yeah, he's okay." And so they brought him to do skin to skin with me. But he was having some retraction, which is where, like, his chest was like sucking in, because he was so small that I don't think he, like, got all the amniotic fluid squeezed out of him like they normally would if a baby would have been more full term. Gotta remember, he came a month early. He weighed 5'15" at birth. And so they were like, "He's okay, but we're gonna send him to the well baby nursery for a couple hours just for monitoring." And of course, that's not ideal. I didn't want them to take him, but I wanted to do what was best for him. So at that point, they had been checking him out for a while. I was up walking around. Like, I had delivered my placenta, and then I was up, like, my nurse was helping me get into the bathroom and get cleaned up and put, a fresh gown on. I actually put my own gown on because I had not worn my own gown for the actual birth because it gets really yucky. So I had gotten up and done that, and so then I was going to check on the baby and see him, like, because they had put him on my chest, but I didn't really get to see him. And then I knew they were going to take him, so I wanted to, love on him before they took him to the nursery. So I went over there, and I was walking just fine, like, everything, like, y'all, the relief that you feel when that baby comes out is insane. Like, I went from screaming at the top of my lungs to, like, smiling like nothing was wrong. Gotham was like, "That was wild." Like, you were in so much pain, and then as soon as he was out, you were fine. So they had checked me, and I had not had any massive tears. I had a couple very minor tears, none of them that even required stitches or anything like that. So I was actually doing really well at that point. And so they sent me to mother and baby and get put in my room to wait for the baby to come. And then about 2 hours later, they ended up going ahead and bringing him in, and letting him stay in there with me. So that was what we thought was, I had a great recovery. I ended up having him completely natural, no pain meds. And then, they offered me pain medicine afterwards, just for soreness and all that kind of stuff, and your cramping and all that, because they'll do your like checks on your stomach, and they'll push on you and do your massage, which they told me was going to hurt. It didn't hurt at all. But I had also just been through a natural childbirth, so I was like, I don't think I'll ever feel pain again after feeling that. And so I got to my room, I got settled in there, brought the baby. We were trying to get, situated with feeding and all that kind of stuff with him being so early. I was giving formula at that point, and because my milk had not come in. Obviously it takes a couple of days, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to nurse or if I just wanted to exclusively pump, but I had not brought my pump. So they had a pump for me, but they had to bring lactation in, and it was a whole thing. So I was like, I'm not going to let him sit here and not eat. So I gave him formula in the meantime. And then I decided I did want to nurse. So we tried that. He did great immediately. And things were going well. We were in the hospital from Monday until Wednesday because he was so little that he failed his car seat test on the first try. And that's where if they're under 6 pounds, they have to sit in their car seat for an hour and a half and maintain their vitals. And he made it over an hour, and then he spit up and he choked and his oxygen levels dropped. So he failed that first day. Well, you can't try it again for 24 hours. So he ended up being in there until Wednesday. And then I was getting released no matter what, but he had to pass his car seat test. And I was so worried that he was not going to pass it and I was going to be released and he was going to have to stay. But he did, he passed it. And we got to go home on that Wednesday. Okay, so we thought we're done with hospitals, right? We're good to go. Well, they tell you to, you know, call your pediatrician and get in with a well baby visit within a couple of days of going home. So I had already called the pediatrician and he had an appointment on Friday for that. So when we went into our appointment on Friday, so we left the hospital, his bilirubin levels were at a 9, and when we went to the doctor, his bilirubin had shot up to a 21, which is really, really high. And so that the doctor's just like, okay, we're admitting him to the hospital. So I was a complete wreck. So they sent us straight from the doctor's office back to the hospital, and this time I was thinking he was going to go into like the PICU or the NICU, and I was not going to be able to stay with him, and I was going to have to leave him. And so we got there and they put us on the peds floor and they gave us a room. And so me and Gotham both got to stay with him. They put him under the Billy lights. So he had double lights. He had the bed and then he had the light above him. And then we just started, I started just feeding like crazy. So I was pumping, I was feeding him, I was giving him formula, I was we were doing marathon feedings from that Friday when we got there. All night long. I stayed up all night long and I fed him every 2 hours. I set an alarm to feed him every 2 hours, and other than that, he stayed in that bed. And I'll put a little picture of him in the bed, my little glowworm. So when we got next morning, they check his bilirubin again. It's back down to 9, which they were like, that's impressive that it dropped that much in a night. And I said, we did not play. Mama don't play. I wanted my baby to be able to go home and I wanted him to be healthy. So we're not really sure why his bilirubin shot up like that. He was not, the pediatrician sometimes said that sometimes when they're that early and they're that small, they do not transfer well, as far as like milk just doesn't transfer into their body well. And I think it was just taking him a little while to get his system up and going. So even though I was feeding him, he was throwing it up a lot, spitting it up a lot. He just wasn't getting in the nutrients that he needed. And so that's why he ended up with that really high bilirubin. So we ended up getting to come home on Saturday, and he has been doing fantastic ever since. We went back to the doctor. Let's see, that was Saturday. We went back to the doctor Monday. His billy was good. They said his coloring was great, and we go back for our 2-week checkup this coming Monday, which would have been my induction date. We go back then, and he gets checked again. So he's been doing fantastic. So I want to introduce him to you guys. I'm very excited about it, and tell you his name and all of that fun stuff. So I want you guys to meet my son. This is Canon Condea. Yes, my sweet little baby. Oh, see, look at all that hair. He's got a head full of hair and he looks just like his daddy. Just like him. He's his twin. So we're teeny tiny, itty bitty, little bitty baby, and we're doing great. So we had our first bath last night because our belly button was all healed and we could have a bath. And we went on our first walk around the neighborhood. So we're doing so good. We're doing so good. Yeah. Yeah, look at our face. Look at our face. So Canon is spelled K-A-N-N-A-N. It is my husband is Tamil, if you guys didn't know that. He's Tamil, and that is a traditional Tamil name. It is has Hindu heritage, and it's another name for the Hindu god Krishna. So we wanted to give some homage to his dad's culture and say, this is our little Canon. This is him. This is our sweet baby. So I'm doing so good, and I'm getting bigger. So we're, last time we weighed, we were at 5 pounds and 10 ounces. So we're trying to get back up to our birth weight because we dropped a lot being so sick and in the hospital. But we're getting back there, and I just wanted you guys to meet him. So we're gonna do another video that is like the things that the necessities I needed to survive my first week with this little guy in my life. So that should be the next video. I'm gonna go round up all the things that we just had to have this first week to make it through, huh? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but this little guy is getting hungry, and so I'm going to go and nurse. And yes, so you guys asked me some questions. I told you guys to ask me some questions on Instagram, and you guys sent in some questions on of like why he came early. So I already mentioned that and told that story, but like people asked if I was breastfeeding, and yes I am. We're still nursing, and we pump and we supplement with formula as we need, and that's just till he gets back up to his birth weight, and then he can nurse, which I'm really enjoying breastfeeding, honestly. It was one of those things that I didn't even like the idea of doing it, and then I was like, I think I want to try it, and I did, and I just love it. So we're breastfeeding. Look, he's gonna be awake for you guys. Hi. Hi. Yeah. And so we're loving that. And then let's see, what else did you guys ask? You asked me. I took screenshots. I want to make sure I get all your questions, and then we'll go eat, buddy. We'll go eat. See, did he come early for blood pressure issues? So I had talked about in previous videos and on TikTok and stuff that I have chronic hypertension. That was a very big concern with him and like being pregnant and preeclampsia. My blood pressure was fantastic all the way through my pregnancy. I was on labetalol twice a day, and it was just worked perfectly for me, and it was fantastic. So my blood pressure was great, wasn't it? So since how have you been feeling? My blood pressure has been a little high since having him, but it's been fine. I've been monitoring it at home. It did get a little high one day, but I took some Tylenol, laid down, and it went down, and it was just fine. And then somebody asked, a couple people asked, how did weight loss surgery make pregnancy harder or easier? Honestly, I just ate more often during my pregnancy because of having the sleeve, because I can't eat like obviously large meals, but it didn't make it any harder. I just ate more frequently, and just to make sure that I was getting enough calories in for myself and for him. But yeah, he's just fine. I said he just came a little early. That's why he's so small. So we wanted to meet mama and daddy, and so we just came a little early. Yeah. Yeah. And then somebody asked about, I had posted that I had figured out baby wearing. So that wrap was the Solly baby wrap. I really like that one. I also have the Wild Bird ring sling that I have not used yet, and then I have a Boppy Comfy Fit that I have not used yet. But the wrap I absolutely love. He loves it. I put him in there. I think it makes him feel like he's back in my belly, because I'm like put him in there while I'm walking around doing housework and stuff like that. So he loves it. And what else? I'm officially on maternity leave. I get 12 weeks of maternity leave. So I'm in my second week, and say we're just figuring it out, aren't we? First time mom, say we're figuring it out. You and me, bud. You and me. So, all right, you guys, I just wanted you to meet him, and I wanted to tell you guys how everything went. Because it was a crazy ride. It was not anything I expected. Like I said, I was not expecting to have a natural birth, but my recovery from it has been fantastic. I have been, I've not had a lot of pain. I've barely taken Tylenol. I've taken no pain medicine at all. It's just been such a breath of fresh air. Like, I was so worried that recovery was going to be hard, and having a newborn and him having to go back to the hospital for a second time and all of that. I'm so thankful that I ended up having him naturally, and I've been able to have such an easy recovery, just because he needed me so much more than, even what I expected with going back to the hospital and stuff like that. So, but yes, I'm healthy. I'm healthy now. I'm a healthy boy. So I eating a little piggy. Yeah, you hungry? Looking around. So yeah, guys, I will see you in the next one, and we'll make a video on like how I survived my first week. And then we'll get back to some fashion videos too, now that I am not extremely pregnant and I can fit into my clothes again. So I just wanted you guys to meet my little sugar. Yes. So we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.